Do you believe in life after love? Uncivilized. Bam. We're here. Bam.
Hello.
Another podcast. Bam. Hello. First time people. My name is Moo. I got Brian, Zach, and we have a guest. Shit, do we have a guest? Do we have somebody? Who's down there? Who's that little guy?
Hi. Hey. Hi, everybody.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Kalen Allmandinger, a guy I've known for about 24 years, just as long as I've known Ian. Actually, in college, it was Ian and Benny, me and Kalen, but Benny and Ian would go and do weird shit, and me and Kalen were the ones that were in theater together. So I actually hung out with Kalen more than anybody. He's an old friend. He's a genius. Kalen, how are you?
I'm good, doing well. It's good to see you fine people here gathered today.
Yeah. So Kalen, let's just jump right into it. Where you from, buddy? If people don't know anything about you, where you from? Like, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, I'm from Iowa originally. I was born in Iowa, Midwesterner. We moved around a little bit up to Wisconsin, then back to Iowa. I went to school with you in Chicago. And then after school, we studied theater, as you just mentioned. And I was working a little bit in Chicago with some professional companies. And
Yes.
then I auditioned for Blue Man Group and got that job right out of college. And that brought me to the East Coast. And I've been doing that on and off ever since in different cities all over the world.
What year did you first audition for Blue Man Group, to let the people know who are listening? There's a lot of actors who listen to this and just people who want to get into industry in general.
Yeah.
What year did you first audition, and what happened with your first one?
That would have been 97, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated high school in 96, started that fall at Roosevelt with you. And then I think it was maybe right after the winter break or something. It was early 97. So I was a freshman in this acting program, and I didn't know what Blue Man was, and a friend of ours had seen it in New York and saw that they were holding auditions for the Chicago production, which was set to open, I think, later that year.
Yeah.
And he knew that I played drums and that I kind of physically looked the part. They try to keep everybody within a certain height range and kind of body type. And so he told me I should go check it out. And I did. And it was in this hotel room in Lincoln Park. I forget exactly which one it was, but pretty close to the lake. And yeah, they had me do a bunch of weird stuff. And at the end of it, they said, finish school, you're too young. Like if you want to come back when you're
Get your
done,
young ass out of here, nigga.
That's right. Yeah. Good job. But
That's exactly what they said to me.
Yeah, they said they didn't want to pull me out of school, but they did. It wasn't. I guess it wasn't a hard no. They said, keep in touch, and if you're still interested when you're done with school, give us a call, and we'll see what we can do then. So that's what happened. They would come around every year to hold kind of open call auditions, which happened to be at our school. So it was really easy to keep in touch with them because there were these big, I think it was called IRTAs.
Yes.
Right. And
yes.
So it was like
basically is when you want to go to grad school.
Yeah. It's an event where a bunch of different casting directors come from primarily grad schools, but also maybe local casting directors and whoever else probably pays a fee or whatever to be there. So you audition once for all these different people. And Blue Man, the casting department from Blue Man did that. And it was in our main theater. So I would just go in, wait for a coffee break, and just be like, hey, it's me, remember? Hey. And then, yeah, when we graduated, they were holding some more open calls, and they had me do something, and they said, okay, let's keep going. And they flew me out to New York for all of these callbacks. And that lasted for a week. And at the end of that week, they said, okay, it had, whittled down to, there were 4 of us that they hired.
Yeah.
And they said, the training class actually starts, that was a Friday. They said it starts on Monday. So you guys are here, you get a job if you want it. And we were like, oh my God, it was pretty exciting. Just had the backpack that I flew out with, not knowing that it was going to be the beginning of the whole, the whole training process. And
Yeah.
That's wild.
living in New
So
York.
I'm curious, with the Blue Man Group, what aspect of drumming really goes into like the audition and everything? Because I mean, it's always amazing. I've been a drummer as well for like 25 years, so I mean, I enjoy
cool.
the whole show. But I'm curious about that.
Yeah, well, they for the Blue Man auditions, the band, so there. For anybody who doesn't know, there are 3 Blue Men in every show, and we play a lot of percussion instruments, some more recognizable and some that are made out of like PVC instruments and different forms of these sort of kind of invented instruments. And then there's a band too that play. So there's a drum set player and a percussionist in certain shows and string players and stuff. So they have a whole different audition process. But for the Blue Men, it's basically they'll just kind of see. The drumming itself isn't very technical. You don't have to have necessarily any drumming experience. Musicality helps if you play another instrument. It's mostly just about seeing if you can play in an ensemble and if you can pick it up if you don't have much experience. But if you do, if you have been playing, then it's a little easier, and it's more about the just kind of telling a story with it. The music itself, like I said, isn't technical, but it's to serve a purpose, and that purpose is to kind of like move the joke forward or the whatever dramatic event is happening at that time. So the Blue Man also doesn't speak, and so you just kind of use your eyes and to communicate these ideas. So they want to get an idea of if you can kind of multitask. So they'll have you do like a simple kind of 16th note pattern and add some accents to it, so that there's a bit of a melody or a rhythm at least established, and then kind of just play and have you kind of emote in different ways. But that also changes as the callbacks continue. They get more specific with things. At first, it's just a very simple kind of rudimentary drumming test.
Nice. He's a very good drummer. So when it gets back, we might have to get him an audition.
Let me know. I know some people.
That's awesome.
You guys don't have to shave your heads or anything, do you?
No, shave his face. But all of this is covered up with a bald cap. We glue latex bald cap over our hair and ears, and we actually wear in-ear monitors, and so that we have.
I have another question too. Colors evoke emotion. So why Blue Man Group? Is it because of the type of music? Is it bluesy? Is it supposed to be a mood that's evoked by the color? Why?
Yeah. That's a good question, and one that people often ask. When we've done interviews on whatever local TV shows when we're on tour and stuff. And honestly, there isn't like a known simple answer. I think ultimately it was just they thought it looked cool. But what we say often is that, like you said, colors evoke emotions, and blue, if anything, can be a little more neutral. So like if you imagine that look, bald, kind of expressionless and all red, it might look kind of demonic, or if it was green, maybe like an alien or something, so I think blue is a little more of a blank canvas from which to start. That's what I would often say anyway. Nice. And they were also the original 3 guys, and all their collaborators were pretty highly influenced and into like the modern art and performance art scene, particularly in New York at the time, which would have been like the late 80s, early 90s, that they were kind of developing all of this stuff. And then also just modern art in general. And Yves Klein was a really popular painter who worked a lot in blue monochrome prints, and the blue is very similar to that. So I don't know if that was an influence too, because it's a pretty similar hue. But you see other elements of there's like little shout outs to Klein and different artists, Pollock, there's kind of this messy, the Blue Man makes a mess and kind of makes different bits of art too. And it's about the process in it. And I think that was influenced by those modern artists that they were checking out.
Nice.
Have either one of you guys seen the Blue Man Group, Brian and Zach?
Yeah.
Not officially live. No, I have not. No.
Yeah. Many moons ago, but I remember very distinctly the whole show, the PVC pipe, and the paint, the splatter, and everything. It's a cool ass show, man. It's a good time.
And that
Yeah,
started with three guys in New York in like 91 or what year?
Yeah, well, that's the year that the Astor Place Theater show, which is still there. They actually own that building now, but that's when they opened their sort of the Blue Man show. But before that, they would just do like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, different performance art spaces around the city, and sometimes just out on the street. Their first notoriety, I think, came when they did, I think it was in '88. They did a preemptive funeral for the '80s where they marched through Central Park. And it was before the character was developed. There were like 8 or 9 of them all dressed up as, in blue, but they had their whole bodies painted. They were wearing these blazers and their chests were exposed and all of it was blue. And, it was before they kind of refined the look and the mannerisms of the character because they were talking. But MTV picked it up, MTV News, and that was broadcast. And what they did was, they did a funeral for the '80s where they had like this coffin full of crack cocaine and yuppies and Reagan and all these things that they kind of buried and burned in effigy. They were like saying, we're ready to be done with the '80s and move on. So that gained a little notoriety. And then they just continued. I think that was, if not the first thing they did, one of the very first things that they did. And then they started just putting together these little 5-minute bits, 10-minute bits. And eventually they had enough of those to put together into the first version of the show in '91 in New York. And it just never stopped,
Yeah. That's
other shows.
That's fucking great. Cause how many actual, obviously before COVID, how many shows were going at once?
Blue Man had
Vegas.
Yeah. New York, Chicago, Boston, Orlando, Vegas. Plus they had a national tour. And an international tour, which I don't know if they were on a break or whatever, but and then Berlin. So they had 8 at that time when COVID hit. And before that too, like I did the show in London and Tokyo.
Yeah.
They had an Amsterdam show. They've had a couple, Toronto, that have opened and closed, and different tours that have come and gone.
You've done all of them. You've been to like Berlin. You've done all the shows pretty much, right?
Most of them, yeah. I never did Toronto, and there were a couple international tours that I never did, but I've done most of them, yeah.
And you're also a trainer now. Like you train.
Upgrade.
Yeah.
Upgrade, yeah. Something like that.
That's good.
Over the years I've served as a Blue Man captain, which is like the guy who helps with schedules and conduit to management and all that. And you help out with training and that sort of thing too. And we've done a bunch here in Vegas in particular. That's where I still live. I was doing the show at the Luxor when the pandemic hit. And Vegas, had tons of conventions, and Blue Men would often get hired for that sort of thing. So and sometimes we'd write material for that. We had kind of out of the box convention stuff, that we could do, or we would do custom stuff because we had a team here we just had the capacity to do it, and people who were willing to work on extra stuff. So I would help write that kind of stuff. We would do, we performed in Life is Beautiful 3 years in a row, and we were set to do it again this year, but that's
You've done the Tonight Show too, haven't you?
Tonight Show a couple times. I did it with Leno a few times, and then
really
Alan
old school
as well.
Nice.
Yeah, we did it.
The old chin, is that chin really that big? Did he
It
offer
is.
you any Doritos?
It's bigger.
Kids, you don't know this, but Jay Leno, when we were kids, was a nigga trying to get you to sell Doritos. And the motherfucker chin was like the Moon Man's chin. It was huge. Yeah, I remember when Kalen did Blue Man for the Tonight Show, like in 2005. It was a while ago.
2003, that was.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Because obviously I was already out in LA. Yeah,
we did Coachella that year too.
I went to Coachella that year. I remember when he got the call, and he called me from New York, and he was like, "Hey man, I think I got it." I was like, "Damn man, that's unbelievable. You're about to do Blue Man." And I literally just finished making out with a 50-year-old woman at China. And I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror and splashed water on my face. And I was like, I'm a loser.
Why did I know something outrageous was coming?
That's right.
Yeah.
So Kalen, me and Brian are, you didn't know this, but we're starting Black Man.
The Black Man Group.
The Black Man Group. It's me, Brian, and a buddy of ours named Big Rob. The Big Wedding. And you guys throw marshmallows. We're gonna throw hot ass chicken wings at each other.
We also have synchronized dances.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'll be the first
COVID-free
night.
because we're just gonna show up in your house uninvited and start dancing and throwing shit.
Yeah, we only do private parties.
Only private.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask you, buddy, how many of those motherfucking marshmallow balls you gotta catch in your mouth? You know what I'm talking about, Brian? When they throw that shit across the stage. What are we talking about?
So I'm so confused right now.
Okay, Kalen, tell them about the shit you throw in the mouth. And Zach, you need to listen if you want to audition, nigga.
Yeah. Start practicing. Loosen up those cheeks.
Yeah.
So there's a part in the show early on where we throw gumballs and marshmallows. One blue man throws gumballs to one of the blue men and marshmallows to the other, kind of across the stage. Yeah. We catch it in our mouth, and then the gumballs are made to look like gumballs. They're little paintballs. You break it in your mouth, and then you kind of spit it on this canvas and make a picture that way. And then the other side, the guy catches a bunch of marshmallows, and then he brings out a pedestal and kind of squeezes it all out of his mouth and makes this disgusting sculpture.
Jesus Christ.
And I think it's about 30, a little over
30.
Yeah.
Wow. God,
that's
damn.
awesome.
All
That's
right,
awesome.
Brian, I'm going to have to hit you with 30 boneless Buffalo Wild. Mango habanero, nigga.
Careful.
I think I need to hit you with them.
You hit me with shit. You know I ain't gonna be able to. If you throw me wings, I'm gonna take my time and eat them.
No, you're gonna hack it. You're gonna hack it first.
I might hack it. And that's something that Kalen, they've seen. They don't know. Brian kind of knows because we were doing Blackie Sack at the time, but you actually were there. Will you please tell these two just how good I was?
It's real. Everything you've heard and more. He would be, so he lived in the dorms at our school for a couple years, and it was right downtown Chicago. The school was in one building, the dorms were right next to it, all right there in the South Loop. And he would just stand on Wabash Avenue for hours. I mean, I'm assuming you went to your classes. You usually, I think you did pretty well in school.
I did.
But if the weather was nice, Moo was outside kicking that ball around. And there were a couple other pretty good people that would join in, come in and out. But usually it'd be like some stinky hippies, but, dropping it. And then it would get to Moo and he'd have it for about 5 minutes. Spinning the foot around it a couple times before he catches it and doing stalls and behind the back, everything. He was svelte. He was gorgeous. Take that sack.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Michael Jordan doubles back then. It was a great time. What's crazy about that part in Chicago, and you went to Uncivilized right now, ladies and gentlemen, we got Kalen Allmandinger with us. What's great about that time in Chicago was that we didn't know, Brian and Zach, just how dangerous it was down. I'm kicking a hacky sack around, and them niggas walking around with guns. Like, it was like, it's Chicago's unlike a LA, or even I would say New York, because we would actually feel, I would walk in the spot and just feel like, oh, I might get my ass whooped in here. And I'm already a big dude. There was one time, these kids from Southside Chicago, you're already close, B. When you're in the loop, it's the South Loop, and then you just basically, you go to the South Side, and the train would bring people up, and there's basically nowhere to hide. And these kids, me and Kalen were going to McDonald's, and we were dressed as classic story, and we were dressed up, because back then, in Chicago and New York, your dress shows your money. So you can't be as low key. Like I was wearing like button up shirts, Stacey Adams and slacks. Brian's like, yeah, you're like a preacher. I can see it. I was 19 looking like a fucking preacher. And then Kalen was dressed up. And these kids from Chicago was like, we're in line, and I'm smoking, mind you, in line, smoking inside, holding an ashtray, an aluminum one from McDonald's. Like, what the if you could never do that now. And these kids are like, these motherfuckers dressed up like a bunch of punk ass. What these guys like? Y'all looking gay or some shit or something they said. I ran after these kids. They're about 15, 16 years old, B. And I grabbed one of them. And the other ones were running up to the train. I was like, look here, motherfucker. I'll beat your motherfucker. And Kalen was just standing there drinking a drink. And like, what are you doing to these kids right now? And I was like, oh, they talking shit. And he's like, man, we can't go beating up kids. We're in college. You got to chill out. Those kids could have called me shit right to my face. And I just would have drank a drink and looked away. I said, all right. I took that moment and I just chilled. All that Alabama, Huntsville, that old Lovecraft country slave. Oh, man. I was just, you come from the South, any disrespect, you own it. But Kalen, I took that part like, oh, I just can't wild out all the fucking time. I never told you that, Kalen, but I kind of chilled out after that. Now, granted, then I started bouncing right after that, Brian, and beating the shit out of people. But
well, that's your outlet there.
Yeah, that was my outlet there.
That's interesting you say that. I was just talking to a friend who's from the South.
Yeah.
We used to live in Malibu, and we were back visiting them. They're still there. And they were saying, there were a couple people from the South, and they were talking about that idea of like, just culturally in the South, everyone treats everybody with a certain assumed amount of respect.
Yes.
You don't have to earn it. Like that's where you start from. But then if there's any slight or disrespect, then there's going to be an issue. Whereas like maybe on the East Coast in New York, you don't get that off the bat. You kind of have to earn somebody's respect. And it's not that people would necessarily be rude to you, but there's a different level of like courtesy, or it was just interesting to think about it in those terms. And I've heard you tell that story a bunch of times. It's part of our history, whatever. So we reminisce. But that's interesting that was like a moment. A moment. I just I'll never forget that. Yeah, I'm chasing after children. Like I need the children. yeah. Oh, my fucking ass. And why am I smoking in McDonald's? Second, why are we eating McDonald's? Which is just the worst.
Why are you smoking in McDonald's?
Oh, just a goddamn disaster. Yeah, Kalen lived out in Malibu for a little bit. He was doing voiceover work just like Jackson. Kalen knows Jackson at the booth. And just keeping busy. I would say anybody listening to this, especially the beginning story he had, you just have to keep at it. He went out for Blue Man early on, didn't get it, and was persistent about, chasing the dream that he had. He's been highly successful with that. He's a goddamn a Blue Man legend. When I meet other Blue Men, I've met him out in Vegas one time, and the guy's a goddamn legend. He's a great friend. He has huge eyes. I don't know if you guys are noticing how big his fucking eyes are.
That's the only reason I got the job. I don't know.
That's the only reason. Have you guys been watching? Let's segue into a little bit of television, some sports shit I kind of want to get into. Lovecraft is about the best thing I've seen. Has anybody seen that?
Fuck you.
No, I hear it's good though.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, Brian, what you think of the last episode of Lovecraft where they had to go? Did you see the last one?
Yeah, I saw the last one.
Man,
you talking about from the basement where you have services from the basement? This whole devil voodoo stuff. I mean, that was kind of off of me. I'm confused a bit about that one.
We'll
talk about that offline, but
that's
all right. This last one confused me a bit. The first two I like.
Kalen, the show basically takes real stories, and not because obviously it's like demonic shit in it, but it's some of the stuff is very real, like the sundown cities where if you're black, by the time the sun came down, you had to be the fuck out of there.
Right.
They talked about which is odd. I didn't even know this. They talked about in the last episode Martin Luther King having like this white girlfriend. And then before, and then people talked to him like, hey, if you want to be the leader of this, here's Coretta Scott. Let's kind of bring this in. Let's kind of clean this up. And I was like, is this fucking real? Then I called my dad. He's like, oh yeah, Martin, man. he was with them pink toes. And pink toes is what you call a white woman. So everyone's learning. White people.
You know, we have codes.
Yeah.
You're learning codes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm letting out
Right.
now. But yeah, that shit is excellent show. You got to watch Kalen. You got to check it out. I know Kalen has a wife and kid. Tell us a little bit about the business that your wife's doing. Yeah, let's know a little bit about that kid. Kalen's got a lot of shit going on. Tell me about that, so you can promote that on this.
Thanks. Yeah, my wife has always been involved in fashion, kind of as a photographer, stylist. She's from Israel. She used to work in television there at an early age, and but then she's been in the States for a long time. But so in the States, she was a photographer, and then she would kind of design her own clothes. She lived in New York for most of the time. She would sell it kind of on the weekends on the Young Designers Market in Little Italy, and kind of always in and out. And then when she stopped for a bit and we were traveling and we went to Tokyo together and did a little bit more there. But then when we had our daughter, she started making clothes for her and using organic cotton primarily. And she got kind of excited about it again. So then we made that into a business. So it started out as primarily a kids clothing business. And since then we've added women's wear to the line, and since the pandemic hit, we started making masks, and that's most of what we're selling these days. Nice. Which has been nice, especially because I lost my job. Obviously, all entertainment's shut down, and so it's been nice to have a little bit coming in. But it's called Malu Organic, MALU Organic, and Malu we got a website if you want to check it out. Anyone who's listening. I made this T-shirt. Like I make stuff for myself, but we don't sell any men's wear at the moment. But you get some good stuff for women, kids, and really nice masks. Reusable.
I'm a 42 waist. Make me a pair of drawers.
Done.
I need a pair of drawers. Is it hard now? Do you have? I don't know shit about how you make clothes. So, like the shirt, you design it, then you just take it somewhere, and then they make it. Is that basically it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I made this one myself just to try to figure it out and learn to use machines and stuff. But yeah, Molly will design. She'll kind of make a pattern and work on the drawn out, the block, like cardboard kind of actual patterns of it. She'll make a garment and create the pattern, but then she'll bring it to. We have here in Vegas. We've started working with a production company that does all the cutting and sewing for us, and there's tons of that. LA is where most of that happens in the States these days. So that's where we started when we were in Malibu, is when we started all of it, and we did all our production there, and still have some ties there. And we'll go maybe every once in a while to dye things there at the dye house we used to use, or if we need overflow, but primarily we do everything here in Vegas.
So you would say LA even more so than New York would be the place to get stuff made?
I mean, both places, but I don't know. All of this is new to me. Like I'm just learning as I go. But yeah, my understanding is that especially kind of south of downtown, Vernon, all those, where everything just
the fashion district. Yeah,
exactly. That's where the fashion district is, right there in town. But then it all just from there just explodes out, and there's all these warehouses and everything you could possibly imagine. All like wholesale for whatever
embroidery
notions, embroidery, bits and bobs and beads, and and fabric, fabric suppliers, dye houses, all of that just spreads way out. And then tons of actual like factories. You see some of the higher profile ones around the fashion district, like American Apparel was all.
Yes.
I mean that's I guess no longer, but that was a couple buildings right down there. But yeah, a lot.
LA just has more space for that. I mean, New York just has space. LA, I remember leaving NY the short time I was there, and someone telling me that the T-shirt game in LA is unrivaled. New York, because New York's going to get stuff first because they're closer to London. So there's stuff I saw, shoes and shit that I saw. I saw a pair of Adidas that were Velcro that I never saw in LA. Like they just never got here. But for T-shirts and like design, like LA, because you can wear a T-shirt year round, and their T-shirt game is it's just nasty, dude. LA's it's a nasty spot. Brian, does designs. Obviously, he designed our logo for Uncivilized here. And yeah, it's a game that I don't know a lot about. Malu Organic. Obviously, anybody listening needs to check it out. I know, Kalen, you don't watch a lot of sports. I think, Zach, did you catch the game? Because I know me and Brian, I know I watched that game last night.
Yeah, that was a hell of an end to that game.
I mean, man. Kalen, you're in the betting capital, buddy.
I know.
What
Thank
is
God I don't bet, because I'd be more broke than I am.
Woo, man, it was crazy last night. Speaking of crazy, though, what is the craziest shit you've ever seen out in Vegas? I've seen crazy shit in L.A. Me and Brian's seen me do crazy shit. So is Zach. You've seen me do crazy shit.
Yeah.
But in Vegas, what's the craziest thing where you're like, this is some of the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life?
You know, every time I came to Vegas, even before I lived here doing the show full time, I would come here when we were living in LA and do like a weekend or a week, worth of shows.
Yeah.
And I was here to work. So I wasn't really going out. I would get kind of just like annoyed by all the people just thinking that they're in their own Hangover movie and they're just like pissing on the carpets and, leaving stuff to be picked up by the staff. And I'm like, I work here, I'm like
motherfuckers.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to kind of have that like island of for lost boys, kind of place where you just go and open up the valve, and that's what Vegas is based on. So it's cool. I don't begrudge anybody, but I honestly, and that, since we moved here, I don't really go out and see much. I've heard some crazy stories, especially from the earlier days, like when Blue Man opened here in Vegas. It was 99 or 2000.
Yeah.
It was 2000. This would have been this is 20 years that we've been here now. And at that time, like it was a big new show, and so like guys they were kind of local celebrities at the time, and they would be able to get into clubs, and everyone, it was this buzz, Yeah. And there were some stories from that time, but they're not my stories. So
yeah. What about the story of Poops Gerard?
Okay.
He's like, okay, do I have to do that?
Right? We don't have to use his real name, but this
gonna tell you a little story about Poops Gerard. Yeah, there was in those early days, they all partied all the time, and I think the partying had caught up to one of them, and in the show, before too much time had passed, pretty early on in the show, he had an accident. And so the costume bears a little explanation to really get the full impact of the story. We wear like kind of sweatpants material, like a tunic, just a top and pants that have little stirrups underneath the ankles that go inside of our boots, and everything's custom made, and there's more, layers underneath, but basically that's what you see. But the key detail being the pants go into the boots. And so this guy had an accident and made a little deposit in his pants. And early on in the show, and then proceeded. He had to finish the show, and the other guys could smell it and stuff. But there's a point about halfway through where we go into the audience and walk on the chairs, and kind of pick out a couple people to invite up on stage with us, or throw things in our mouths and stuff. So he's walking, on chair backs with his foot right here, just sloshing around, and that's
man,
full of burrito sauce. And he's legendary now. Everybody knows of him. I actually know him and did a couple shows with him. Very sweet guy. But Moo knows who he is, and he's never even, he doesn't know anybody from that world really. So.
A little Taco Bell beef burrito.
Yeah, something like that.
Rough.
I mean, Jesus, I laugh at Poops Gerard, but I have a personal story of mine that I'm willing to share with
just
everybody.
One?
Yeah, just one. And this might be the
The end.
This might be the end of this podcast. But we got a lot of good information out of Kalen Allmandinger, Blue Man, legend, a father. I was driving for Senate Theater Group. I worked for Senate Theater Group for 10 years, downtown LA, the Marte Performing Amundsen, the opera, where I worked with Tim Simons, who actually is a friend of me and Kalen's on a TV show called Veep. I had to roll out to go to the Kirk Douglas in Culver City. And I had, funny enough, I just had the Baja Chalupa. I had two of them. Baja Chalupa with, this is a true story. True story. You can ask Jackson Cannon about this one. I had a Taco Supreme and I had the Baja Blast, which you can really go get. We really can only get at, I think, at Taco Bell, which is the Mountain Dew Baja Blast. And I was driving a van, and I could feel the Deuce train coming. It was coming down the tracks to choo choo. Here comes the Deuce train. And then I started driving with I started pushing up because you need to clench your cheeks. And when you sit on the seat, it's too warm, so you can't tell whether your cheeks are warm or whether there's boo-boo coming out keeping your cheeks warm. And so now I'm fully off the steering wheel. I'm looking in the back of the van. Do I just park in the shit in the van and like a blanket, one of the packing blankets we got? I said, no, I'm almost to the Douglas. I'm going to make it. I get out of the van. I'm running, cheeks clenched. And I opened the door to the Douglas, and a person that I didn't know stopped me. I was like, hey, man, what's going on? I'm looking for this. And I just started shitting on myself. I just started shitting on myself, and I was like, God damn it. And I was probably about 33. Like, why am I shitting on myself? And I got back in the van, sat down with the shit still in my underwear, and I drove home because I lived off of Centinela, Brian, the old school spot. Yeah. And I walked up the steps, and the shit's not falling out because I got the box of briefs on tight, and it's just keeping that warm shit in my pants. And I get into the shower, and I take the jeans off. I move the bathroom rug not to get shit on them, and I cut the shower on and take everything off. And I'm just crying in the shower because I'm like, something's wrong with me. I'm not 70. I'm 30. I just shit on myself. And then in the shower, it was almost like my body was like, we'll just release everything. And then I started shitting more in the shower. It was just shit on top of shit.
All right.
And
cool.
That's a true story.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing
Thank
that,
you.
Mo. I bet that's why it was called the Baja Blast. They probably had a focus group. And everybody came back with a similar story.
Yeah, with something in that soda. It was like a laxative.
Oh my God. So I think we should probably end on that note. I mean, Jesus. Zach and B, is there anything else you have?
After that?
Yeah.
No.
Brian looks like
no.
I'm confused again. Once again.
No.
I feel like I smell shit right now because we've been talking about it so much. I'm like over my shoulder. What the fuck?
You don't know whether it's me or it's Poops Gerard.
Yeah, right?
Poops Gerard. So little kids, if you're tucked in bed at night and you feel something stepping onto your bed, you smell a little hint of shit, it might be the ghost of Poops Gerard coming to haunt you.
Blue Man Group.
And don't drink any Baja Blast either.
Don't
do it. It'll blast right out your cheeks.
It's light blue. Don't drink it.
Don't drink it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another excellent episode of Uncivilized Intellects. It's great guest, Kalen Allmandinger. Thank you, buddy. You shed a lot of
thank you very much
on one of the greatest shows fucking out, just innovating, the Blue Man Group. An old friend, a friend of 24 years, and it's good to see you, old friend. This was great.
You too, my friend.
Absolutely. I'm Moo.
Brian.
Zach.
We're out this motherfucker. Don't go to Taco Bell. You might end up
leave it alone. leave them beef burritos from Taco Bell alone.
It's not worth it.
Oh my God. Peace, guys.
All right, take care, fellas.
Later.